sues New York City for wrongful termination of contracts. Former President Donald Trump's company sued New York City Monday for allegedly wrongfully terminating contracts the Trump Organization had to operate city facilities. "The city has no right to terminate our contract," Trump Organization officials said in a statement. Mayor Bill de Blasio's actions are purely politically motivated, have no legal merit, and are yet another example of the mayor's efforts to advance his own partisan agenda and interfere with free enterprise. Mayor de Blasio announced in January he was moving to terminate the contracts with the former president's company following the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol. The president incited a rebellion against the United States government that killed 5 people and threatened to derail the constitutional transfer of power. De Blasio said at the time, "The City of New York will not be associated with those unforgivable acts in any shape, way or form. And we are immediately taking steps to terminate all Trump Organization contracts." More. New York City cancels all contracts with Trump Organization. In the wake of the January 6 attack, several companies, including the PGA Tour, canceled contracts they had with the Trump Organization. Trump himself was suspended from several social media platforms. And Facebook recently announced it would keep the suspension active until after the 2022 midterm elections. The Trump Organization pocketed about $17 million per year from operating 2 Central Park ice skating rinks, the Central Park Carousel and the Trump Golf Links at Ferry Point. The lawsuit alleges wrongful termination of a long-term contract the company had to operate the city-owned golf course at Ferry Point in the Bronx, which wasn't due to expire until 2032. "There can be no dispute that we are not just meeting, but exceeding our obligation to operate a first-class, tournament-quality daily fee golf course," the Trump Organization's statement said. The other contracts were set to expire earlier this year and were not renewed. The city said it followed the termination process set forth in the contract. The actions of Mr. Trump to incite a deadly riot at the Capitol on January 6 caused a breach of the Ferry Point contract by eliminating options for hosting championship events. "And we will vigorously defend the city's decision to terminate the contract," said a spokesperson for the New York City Law Department. The mayor's spokesperson put the onus on the former president. "It was Donald Trump who interfered with basic democracy when he incited a deadly insurrection at the U.S. Capitol," said City Hall spokesperson Bill Neidhart. "You do that, and you lose the privilege of doing business with the City of New York. It's as simple as that."
शरद पवार के साथ विपक्षी नेताओं की बड़ी बैठक, पीएम नरेंद्र मोदी के खिलाफ मोर्चे की तैयारी। ममता बनर्जी से जुड़े 2 लोगों की शरद पवार से मुलाकात कोई सामान्य घटना तो नहीं हो सकती। वैसे एनसीपी के नेता इस मुलाकात को 2024 की तैयारी से जोड़ने से इनकार कर रहे हैं, लेकिन संकेत भी दे रहे हैं कि मोदी सरकार के खिलाफ बड़ी रणनीतिक तैयारी हो रही है। नई दिल्ली, साल 2024 के लोकसभा चुनाव 2024 लोकसभा पोल्स में अभी करीब 3 साल का वक्त बाकी है, लेकिन लगता है विपक्षी दल अभी से 2024 की रणनीति बनाने की कोशिश में जुट गए हैं। ऐसा इसीलिए क्योंकि दिल्ली में आज एक बड़ी राजनीतिक बैठक होने जा रही है। ये बैठक एनसीपी अध्यक्ष शरद पवार के साथ होगी और इसमें टीएमसी के उपाध्यक्ष यशवंत सिन्हा भी शामिल होंगे। तीसरे मोर्चे का चेहरा कौन? इस मीटिंग को मोदी विरोधी मोर्चा के गठन से जोड़कर देखा जा रहा है। इससे पहले शरद पवार चुनावी रणनीतिकार प्रशांत किशोर से भी मुलाकात कर चुके हैं। वहीं सोनिया गांधी ने भी केंद्र सरकार को घेरने के लिए 24 जून को एक अहम बैठक बुलाई है। आज होने वाली बैठक में मोदी विरोधी मोर्चे का चेहरा कौन होगा? इसे लेकर भी चर्चा हो सकती है। एनसीपी पहले ही साफ कर चुकी है कि पार्टी सुप्रीमो शरद पवार विपक्ष को एकजुट करने पर काम कर रहे हैं। उधर पश्चिम बंगाल में तीसरी बार मुख्यमंत्री बनने के बाद से ममता बनर्जी में आत्मविश्वास गजब का बढ़ गया है। अब ममता बनर्जी बंगाल की राजनीति से बाहर दिल्ली तक अपनी राजनीतिक ताकत को बढ़ाना चाहती हैं। राष्ट्र मंच से तैयार होगा 2024 का मंच। ममता के अलावा टीएमसी के उपाध्यक्ष और पूर्व केंद्रीय मंत्री यशवंत सिन्हा भी खुलकर मोदी सरकार की खिलाफत करते रहे हैं। आज की बैठक से पहले उन्होंने कहा कि राष्ट्र मंच कोई राजनीतिक मंच नहीं है, लेकिन भविष्य में इसके माध्यम से किसी तीसरे विकल्प की संभावना से इनकार भी नहीं किया जा सकता। बीजेपी के पूर्व नेता ने 2018 में राष्ट्र मंच बनाया था और इसने मोदी सरकार की नीतियों को निशाना बनाया है। ये भी पढ़ें, देश में धर्मांतरण जिहाद पर बड़ा खुलासा, समझिए कैसे चलता है ये रैकेट। यशवंत सिन्हा की मुलाकात से एक दिन पहले ही विधानसभा चुनाव में ममता बनर्जी के रणनीतिकार रहे प्रशांत किशोर ने भी शरद पवार से मुलाकात की थी। प्रशांत किशोर इससे पहले भी शरद पवार से एक बार मिल चुके हैं। कहा तो ये भी जा रहा है कि यशवंत सिन्हा और प्रशांत किशोर ममता बनर्जी को तीसरे मोर्चे का चेहरा बनाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। ममता को आगे करने की रणनीति। बीते कुछ दिनों में ममता बनर्जी से जुड़े दो लोगों की शरद पवार से मुलाकात कोई सामान्य घटना तो नहीं हो सकती। वैसे एनसीपी के नेता इस मुलाकात को 2024 की तैयारी से जोड़ने से इनकार कर रहे हैं, लेकिन संकेत भी दे रहे हैं कि मोदी सरकार के खिलाफ बड़ी रणनीतिक तैयारी हो रही है। एनसीपी नेता और महाराष्ट्र सरकार में मंत्री नवाब मलिक कहा है कि पवार मुख्य नेताओं और प्रख्यात लोगों के साथ बैठक की मेजबानी करेंगे। मलिक ने कहा कि देश में मौजूदा परिदृश्य पर चर्चा करने के लिए बैठक बुलाई गई है और इसमें नेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस के नेता एवं जम्मू कश्मीर के पूर्व मुख्यमंत्री फारूक अब्दुल्ला, टीएमसी नेता यशवंत सिन्हा, आम आदमी पार्टी के संजय सिंह और भाकपा के डी राजा शामिल होंगे। बैठक में ये लोग होंगे शामिल। ममता बनर्जी के तीसरी बार बंगाल की मुख्यमंत्री बनने के बाद उनका केंद्र से विवाद पहले के मुकाबले बढ़ गया है। कई मौकों पर ममता बनर्जी खुलेआम ऐलान कर चुकी हैं कि वो 2024 में प्रधानमंत्री मोदी को रोकने की तैयारी में जुटेंगी। अब सवाल है कि आज शरद पवार के घर होने वाली बैठक क्या ममता बनर्जी की मोदी सरकार के खिलाफ 2024 वाली तैयारी का ही हिस्सा है? और क्या शरद पवार तीसरा मोर्चा के संयोजक की भूमिका में होंगे?
New Yorkers cast ballots in mayoral primary, using ranked choice voting for first time. New Yorkers are gearing up to make a choice in the mayoral primary, the first step in determining who will lead the nation's largest city at a critical juncture, amid rising crime rates, an ongoing pandemic and economic recovery. Several factors make this primary unprecedented for the Big Apple, however. New Yorkers are heading to the polls earlier than usual and using ranked choice voting for the first time, all the while much of the primary race has been clouded by the COVID-19 pandemic. The primary election is also taking place in June for the first time. Previously, it was held in September. More. The 5 political boroughs of New York City. With the coronavirus having relegated much of campaigning to Zoom during the spring, there has been a mad dash in recent weeks to turn out voters in the 5 boroughs as life returns a new normal. Early voting concluded Sunday with more than 191,000 New Yorkers casting their ballots. Polls open at 6 a.m. and close at 9 p.m. Tuesday. What is ranked choice voting? This primary serves as a major test for ranked choice voting in the city. When casting ballots, New Yorkers will rank up to 5 candidates for the city's chief executive instead of checking only one box as in elections past. Unlike a traditional winner-take-all election, the victor is decided through a process of elimination based on those rankings. Ranked choice votes come into play if no candidate earns more than 50% of first-choice votes, which is probable for the crowded Democratic primary, where 13 candidates will appear on the ballot. Compared to the 2 Republicans on the GOP ballot, vote counts then take place in rounds. The last-place candidate is eliminated in each round, allowing supporters of losing candidates to shift their support to their other choices. The rounds continue until one candidate has more than 50% of the vote. More. New York City could wait weeks for ranked choice mayoral primary results. It's a change that could delay the final outcome for weeks, according to elections officials. The New York City Board of Elections expects to have a preliminary count of first-choice votes on Tuesday night and will then tabulate ranked choices starting the following week. Who is on the ballots? At the center of the debate over who should lead the nation's largest city, is the uptick in crime and policing. Progressive candidates, including Maya Wiley, former counsel to Mayor Bill de Blasio, New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer and former Housing and Urban Development Secretary Sean Donovan have called for reallocating funds away from the NYPD. Relatively moderate candidates, such as Brooklyn Borough President and former police officer Eric Adams and Andrew Yang, have stated their opposition to the notion of defunding the police and have instead called for more investment in law enforcement. Affordable housing and economic recovery from the pandemic have also been among the top issues. Adams is widely considered the frontrunner in the race. His campaign is flush with cash, but he's faced accusations that he resides outside of New York City. Adams has denied those claims, giving reporters a guided tour of the Brooklyn home where he says he lives. Momentum for Wiley has seemingly surged late in the race with endorsements from progressive heavyweights including Representative Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, DNY, and Senator Elizabeth Warren, D-Mass. Though it is unclear what impact those endorsements will have on the outcome. Former Sanitation Commissioner Catherine Garcia, too, gained momentum later in the race, buoyed by endorsements from the New York Times and the New York Daily News. Yang, a former presidential candidate, benefited early on from high-name recognition, but support for the businessman has waned. The pair campaigned together over the weekend. New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer, who was initially considered the progressive candidate to beat, saw his campaign derailed by sexual misconduct allegations. Stringer has vehemently denied those accusations. Despite calls from his opponents to drop out of the race and the loss of major congressional and progressive group endorsements, he has held on. Euro 2020. Steve Clarke's Scotland face moment of truth against Croatia. So now we know. After the breathless drama of Monday night all that's required of Scotland on Tuesday is a win against Croatia by a single goal and they enter the rarefied air of the knockout stages of a major championship for the first time. Some of the greatest names who ever put boot to ball have tried and failed, but this group can change a decades-old narrative. No relying on other teams to do them a favor, no frantic checking on updates from other matches in other grounds in other cities. A victory and it's done. Nirvana, here we come. Maybe. Of course it's way easier now than it ever was for the Bremners and the Dalglishes and the Laws and all the other Scottish immortals who fell short. But these bloated tournaments are what they're calling progress at UEFA these days. Whatever it is, Scotland have a chance to take advantage. One battle-hardened veteran of the Tartan Army sighed heavily when contemplating this hopeful scenario last night. Quote, He said, with the slightly haunted look of a man who was thinking about the ghosts of campaigns past. What could possibly go wrong? Well, Billy Gilmour is already out, so there's that. As he tries to get over the enormous disappointment of missing this game, we're guessing Gilmour won't take any comfort from knowing that the reaction to the breaking news of his positive COVID-19 test was nationwide hyperventilation. Such was the excellence of his performance against England. He has gone from a star of the future to a star of the here and now. A few days ago we had no cast-iron idea about how quickly Gilmour would take to the white-heat battles of international football. Now we know he takes to them like a Tartan army member takes to a fountain of fairy liquid. Scotland's chances are diminished without him. Croatia, even the great Luka Modric, will be cheered by his absence. Scottish footballing fatalism covers vast amounts of terrain, however. People scarred by previous mishaps might be minded to think that the Gilmour episode is just the beginning of heartache. Is Kieran Tierney waking up with a tightness in his calf? Is Andy Robertson tripping over a cat? Is Che Adams about to have a nasty accident with a fried egg, Kirk Broadfoot style? Much of Monday was taken up with chat about how Gilmour could have got coronavirus, why none of his teammates had to isolate as close contacts, why an Instagram video of Gilmour, Robertson and John McGinn playing table tennis on Sunday night was mysteriously deleted as the Scottish FA attempted to reassure everybody that none of the other Scotland players would be ruled out, as none had strayed that deeply into Gilmour's personal space. There was talk, not of formations or selections but about UEFA's chief medical officer and officials from Public Health England and manifests and protocols. Steve Clarke was peppered with questions about procedures rather than players. This kind of virus story was always going to erupt and cause mayhem during the tournament at one point or another. But the turbulence had to be felt in Scotland first, didn't it? Clarke is the kind of man you want in a situation like this. Big and strong and not one to mope. Coronavirus could have denied him the services of half a dozen of his players, and publicly. He wouldn't have blinked. He'll have heartfelt sympathy for the deeply unfortunate Gilmour, but his transition from sorrow for a fallen player to picking his successor would have taken about as long as the light to go out when you flick the switch. Billy's out. Who's coming in? It's probably going to be Stuart Armstrong, a highly acceptable stand-in with huge experience. Or, perhaps, Scott McTominay will step back into midfield with Liam Cooper returning to the defence. Cooper was on media duty yesterday. A clue or a curve-ball? The blessing about Monday's hubbub is that Public Health England, having pored over the detail, reckon that no other Scot needs to be put in a room for 10 days. If you want to look for positives amid the Gilmour gloom, that's actually quite a major one.